The smell of expensive perfume and cheap whiskey filled my 10-year-old sedan, a combination so jarring it almost made me gag. In the passenger seat, my boss, the CEO, Amelia Hayes, the woman they called the Ice Queen of Sterling Corp, was completely passed out, her head resting against the cool glass of the window. Her perfectly tailored blazer was rumpled, a strand of blonde hair stuck to her lip gloss, and a quiet, almost heartbreaking snore escaped her lips. My hands were gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Every single instinct in my body was screaming at me, "This is a mistake, Marcus, a huge, career-ending, life-altering mistake. I'm a single black dad. My daughter, Lily, was at home with a sitter, probably wondering why Daddy was so late. And here I was, chauffeuring my incredibly powerful, incredibly white, and incredibly drunk boss home from the annual company party. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. Absolutely everything. And I had a sick feeling in my gut that my life was about to change forever, all because I decided to do the right thing. The whole mess started about an hour ago. The party was at some ridiculously fancy downtown hotel ballroom, the kind of place with chandeliers that cost more than my car and waiters who looked at my off-the-rack suit with polite disdain. I usually skip these things. They're not for guys like me, the worker bees in the graphic design department. They're for the sharks, the executives who swim in circles, smiling with too many teeth. But my department head insisted. "FaceTime, Marcus," he'd said. "It's important." So I went. I nursed a single club soda for 2 hours, made some awkward small talk, and was planning my escape when I saw her. Amelia Hayes. She was standing alone by the terrace doors, swaying slightly. The usual circle of sycophants who orbited her had drifted away, probably scared off by the sheer volume of champagne she'd consumed. She looked lost, not like a CEO, but like a woman drowning in a sea of people. I saw her stumble, catching herself on a potted plant, and a wave of something, pity maybe, or just basic human decency, washed over me. I couldn't just leave her like that. What if she fell? What if some sleazy exec tried to take advantage? So, like an idiot, I walked over. And that's how I ended up with her car keys in my pocket and her address plugged into my GPS, a silent prayer on my lips that no cop would pull me over. It was a terrible, terrible idea. And yet, I couldn't see any other choice. The tension in the car was thick enough to chew. Every red light felt like an eternity. I kept glancing over at her, then back at the road, my heart hammering against my ribs. What was I supposed to do when we got to her place? Just drop her on the doorstep? I couldn't do that. I had to make sure she got inside safely. My mind was racing, playing out a dozen different nightmare scenarios. Her waking up, screaming, accusing me of God knows what. A neighbor seeing me, a black man carrying a white woman into her luxury condo building and calling the police. My entire life, the stable world I had so carefully built for Lily since her mom was gone. It felt like it was balancing on a knife's edge. Amelia mumbled something in her sleep. A name. David. It was soft, full of a pain that felt ancient. Who was David? I didn't have time to ponder it. We were here, a gleaming glass tower on the waterfront. I took a deep breath, killed the engine, and the silence that followed was somehow louder than the engine's hum. Now for the hard part. Getting her out of the car and into the building's lobby was an ordeal. She was dead weight, a tangle of limbs and apologies that slurred into nonsense. The night doorman, a stern-looking guy with a mustache, gave me a long, hard look. I could feel his suspicion like a physical weight. "She's my boss," I explained, my voice cracking slightly. "She's not feeling well." He just nodded, his eyes saying what his mouth wouldn't. He buzzed us through, and the elevator ride up to the penthouse felt like a slow ascent to my own execution. Her apartment was immense,
Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a glittering panorama of the city, a view that probably cost more than my entire life's earnings. It was sterile, perfect, like a showroom. But amidst the cold modern furniture, there were little signs of chaos. A half-empty bottle of wine on the counter, a kicked-off heel in the middle of the living room. It was the home of someone who was barely holding it together. I managed to guide her to a plush white sofa where she collapsed in a heap. My job was done. I should have left. I really should have just walked out the door and never looked back. But my eyes landed on a silver picture frame, knocked over on an end table. I don't know why, but I picked it up. It was a photo of her, Amelia, laughing, genuinely laughing. She looked younger, carefree. Her arm was around a handsome man with kind eyes and a wide, easy smile. He was looking at her like she was the only person in the world. On the back, in delicate cursive, was an inscription, Amelia and David, Lake Como, always. David, the name she had mumbled in the car, her husband, I presumed. I felt a strange pang of empathy for this woman who made my work life a living hell. She wasn't just the ice queen. She was a person who loved, who had been happy. I put the frame back, my fingers tracing the cool metal. I turned to leave, my duty fulfilled. My gaze swept the room one last time, just to make sure everything was okay. And that's when I saw it. On the mahogany desk in the corner, almost hidden under a stack of financial reports, was a thick, legal-looking folder. It was slightly ajar, and the tab, in stark block letters, read, Hayes's David Accident Report. My blood ran cold. It was none of my business. It was a massive invasion of her privacy, but a force I couldn't name, a dark curiosity, pulled me closer. I had to know. I don't know why, but I felt like I had to know what happened to the man with the kind eyes. My hand trembled as I reached for the folder. My conscience was screaming at me to stop, but it was like I was in a trance. I lifted the cover. The first page was a standard police report. Details, jargon, official letterhead. My eyes scanned the page, looking for the date of the incident. There it was, October 12th, 3 years ago. My breath hitched in my throat. My world tilted on its axis. October 12th. That date was burned into my soul. It was seared into my memory like a brand. It was the day my Lily lost her mother. It was the day my Sarah went out to the store and never came back. A hit and run. That's what the police had told me. They never found the driver. My heart was pounding, a frantic drum against my ribs. It had to be a coincidence. It had to be. This was a big city. Tragedies happen every day. But my gut, that deep primal instinct, was telling me otherwise. With a sense of dread so profound it made me feel sick, I flipped to the next page. It was a list of involved parties. And there, right under David Hayes's name, was another, a victim, a pedestrian. The name stared back at me from the page, the black ink like a punch to the gut. Sarah Williams. My Sarah. The air left my lungs in a rush. I stumbled back, knocking into a chair, the noise echoing in the cavernous, silent apartment. It wasn't a hit and run. It was this. It was him, the man in the picture. David Hayes, my boss's husband. He hadn't fled the scene. The report stated he'd had a massive heart attack at the wheel, lost control, and collided with a pedestrian before crashing into a storefront. He was dead before the paramedics arrived. 2 lives extinguished in the same instant. My Sarah, her David. All this time, I had carried so much anger towards the phantom driver who had stolen my wife and left my daughter motherless. I had imagined a monster, a coward who sped away in the night. But the monster was a man with kind eyes, who died just as tragically as my wife did. And the woman I worked for, the cold, intimidating CEO, had been grieving the same accident from the other side. All this time, we were two ships passing in the night, both irrevocably damaged by the same storm, and we never even knew it. I looked at Amelia, sleeping on the couch, her face etched with a pain I now understood completely. The room felt like it was closing in on me. The city lights outside blurred into a meaningless smear. My entire reality had been rewritten in the span of 5 minutes. I didn't know what to do. Should I wake her up? Should I tell her? How do you tell someone that your deepest tragedy is also theirs? I sank into the chair I had bumped, my head in my hands. The police report lay open on the desk.
A testament to a shared, secret apocalypse. Why didn't I know? Why didn't the police tell me the full story? Maybe they did, and in my grief-stricken haze, I couldn't process it. Maybe they just closed the case. 2 fatalities, no one at fault, just a horrible, random act of fate. It didn't matter. The result was the same. For 3 years, I had mourned my wife and hated a ghost. For 3 years, Amelia Hayes had mourned her husband, probably seeing him as the sole victim of a cruel twist of fate. Did she even know he had hit someone? Did she know another family was shattered that day? The report was clinical, detached. It listed Sarah as pedestrian, deceased. It didn't mention she was a mother. It didn't mention she had a laugh that could light up a room, or that she made the best pancakes on Sunday mornings. It didn't mention Lily. A fresh wave of grief, sharp and potent, washed over me. It felt like it was October 12th all over again. I looked at Amelia. Her drinking, her isolation, her ice queen persona. It wasn't a personality flaw. It was armor. It was the only way she knew how to survive the same gaping wound that I had been trying to patch up for years. The anger I had held onto for so long evaporated, replaced by a profound, earth-shattering sadness. We were connected, bound together by the worst moment of our lives, and she didn't even have a clue. I must have sat there for an hour, just staring into space, the silence of the penthouse punctuated only by Amelia's soft breathing and the frantic beating of my own heart. The sun would be up soon. Lily's sitter would be wondering where I was. I had to go. I couldn't be here when she woke up. What would I say? "Good morning, Ms. Hayes. You were drunk last night, and, by the way, your dead husband killed my wife?" The thought was insane. I stood up, my legs feeling like lead. I quietly closed the folder and placed it back on the desk, exactly as I had found it. It felt like burying a bomb. My secret. Our secret. I walked to the door, my hand on the knob. I just had to turn it and walk away. I could go back to my life, back to my cubicle, and pretend this night never happened. I could look at her in meetings and see not just my boss, but a fellow traveler in grief, and she would never know. But could I live with that? Could I sit across from her knowing this monumental truth that connected us and say nothing? Could I watch her drown in her own sorrow, thinking she was alone in it? No, my Sarah wouldn't have wanted that. She was all about connection, about truth. Leaving felt like a betrayal, not just to Amelia, but to Sarah's memory. It felt cowardly. So I took my hand off the doorknob. I turned around, and I waited for the Ice Queen to wake up. A soft groan from the couch pulled me from my thoughts. Amelia was stirring. She pushed herself up slowly, her hand going to her forehead. "Oh God," she whispered, her voice raspy. Her eyes, clouded with confusion and a killer hangover, scanned the room. Then they landed on me. Fear flashed across her face first, raw and unfiltered. Then confusion. "Marcus?" she said, her voice barely audible. What are you doing here?" I just stood there, my heart in my throat. My carefully prepared speech, the one I had been rehearsing in my head, vanished. All I could manage to say was, You were at the party? You weren't well. I brought you home." Her cheeks flushed with shame.
"Oh my God, I am so sorry. That was, incredibly unprofessional." She tried to stand, wobbled, and sat back down heavily. "Thank you, Marcus. I don't know what to say. Please don't feel like you need to stay." She was already putting the walls back up, becoming the CEO again. She was trying to dismiss me, to erase the embarrassment of the night, but I couldn't be dismissed. Not now. "Amelia?" And I said, and the sound of me using her first name hung in the air between us. Her eyes met mine, and she must have seen something in my expression, something more than a concerned employee, because her face softened, the corporate mask slipping for a second. "What is it?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Here we go. I saw the picture," I started, my voice quiet, "of you and your husband, David." Her expression tightened. "Please, that's not—" "And I saw the folder on your desk," I pushed on, my words tumbling out before I could stop them. "The accident report." Her face went pale, a stark white against the dawn light filtering through the windows. "You had no right," she whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and shock. "That is my private—" "October 12th, I said, cutting her off. The date landed between us like a grenade. Her eyes widened. All the anger drained out of her, replaced by a look of utter bewilderment. How do you know that date?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I had to force the next words out. They felt like swallowing shards of glass. "Because it was the worst day of my life, too," I said. "My wife, her name was Sarah." I watched as her mind worked, as the pieces clicked into place with horrific, sickening speed. I saw the dawning comprehension, the denial, the sheer unadulterated horror that washed over her face. She shook her head, a small, jerky movement. No, that's not possible. The report said he had a heart attack. It was an accident." "It was," I agreed, my own voice thick with unshed tears. "An horrible, tragic accident, for both of them, for both of us." She stared at me, her blue eyes swimming with tears. The Ice Queen was gone, melted. In her place was just a woman, shattered by a truth she never knew existed. "He hit someone?" she stammered. "My David? I simply nodded, unable to speak. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of two worlds colliding, of two private griefs becoming one shared, unbearable sorrow. And then she broke. A sob tore from her throat, a raw, ragged sound of pure agony, and she buried her face in her hands, her whole body shaking with the force of it. I didn't move. I just stood there and let her cry. It was a storm of grief, 3 years of it, unleashed in a flood of tears and ragged breaths. I was crying too, silent tears tracking down my face, for Sarah, for David, for the two of us, strangers bound by a secret tragedy. After what felt like a lifetime, her sobs subsided into shuddering breaths. She looked up at me, her face blotchy and swollen, her eyes red. The Ice Queen was gone, melted. In her place was just a woman, shattered by a truth she never knew existed. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to God, Marcus, I never knew. They told me he died instantly. They never mentioned anyone else." "I believe you," I said. And I did. I saw it in her eyes. The guilt she was feeling now was a new and terrible burden, laid on top of the grief she already carried. "All this time," she said, her gaze distant, "I've been so angry at his weak heart, angry at the world for taking him. I saw him as a victim. I never once thought that that there was someone else." Her voice cracked. "A family? Did she have a family?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," I said quietly. "She had me, and she had our daughter, Lily. She was 6. Amelia let out another choked sob, this one deeper, more wounded than the last. The name Lily seemed to land on her like a physical blow. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. "What have I done?" She whispered. "You haven't done anything," I said, my voice firm. "This wasn't your fault, Amelia. It wasn't his fault either. It was just something that happened. A terrible, awful thing. that happened to all of us. We sat in the dawn light, two people from different worlds, united by a single catastrophic moment in time. The wall between boss and employee had crumbled into dust. We were just Marcus and Amelia, two survivors, adrift in the same ocean of loss. There was so much to say, yet no words felt adequate. The city was waking up outside, but in this penthouse apartment, time had stopped. This was a new beginning, not a happy one, but a real one. A beginning forged in truth and shared pain. The weeks that followed were strange. At work, on the surface, nothing had changed. I was still Marcus Williams, senior designer. She was still Amelia Hayes, CEO. We passed in the hallways and she would give me a quiet, knowing nod. But underneath, everything was different. There was a current of understanding that ran between us, a silent acknowledgement of the bomb that had gone off in her apartment that morning. The Ice Queen was gone.
In her place was a quieter, more thoughtful leader. People in the office noticed. They called it the new Amelia. They had no idea how right they were. Then, one Tuesday afternoon, I got an email. "Please see me in my office at 4 p.m. A." My stomach did a little flip. I walked up to the top floor, the same journey I'd made that fateful night, but this time in the broad light of day. I knocked on her door. "Come in," she said. Her office was just as intimidating as her apartment, but she stood by the window, looking out, and when she turned, her smile was small but genuine. "Marcus, thank you for coming." There were 2 cups of coffee on her desk. She gestured for me to sit. This wasn't a boss talking to an employee. This was something else. "I haven't been able to stop thinking," she began, sitting opposite me, "about that night, about everything." She took a sip of her coffee. "For 3 years, I've been trying to figure out how to honor David's memory. I've donated to heart associations, funded research, but it always felt incomplete, hollow. Now I know why." Her eyes met mine, and they were clear, filled with a purpose I hadn't seen before. "It wasn't just his story," she said. "It was her story too. It was Sarah's story." My breath caught in my throat. Hearing her say my wife's name, so softly, so respectfully, was both painful and healing. "I've been speaking to my lawyers," she continued, pushing a sleek brochure across the desk towards me. "I want to start a foundation, a real one, something that matters." I picked it up. The title on the front read, "The Hayes Williams Foundation." I looked up at her, stunned. I don't understand." "It's a foundation for single parents," she explained, her voice steady, "specifically for those who have lost their partners in sudden, tragic accidents. It will provide financial aid, grief counseling, childcare support, everything I had access to, but so many, like you, probably didn't." She leaned forward, her expression earnest. "This isn't charity, Marcus. This is, I don't know what it is. Atonement, maybe? A way to create something good from something so terrible. A way to honor them both, David and Sarah." I stared at the brochure, at our 2 names linked together forever. It was an astonishing gesture. It was more than I could have ever imagined. "And," she said, a slight tremor in her voice, "I want you to run it with me, to be a co-director. Your experience, your perspective, it's invaluable. No one else could do this." I was speechless. Me? A graphic designer from a cubicle on the 4th floor, co-directing a major foundation with the CEO? It was surreal. But looking at her, I saw she was completely serious. This was her way of making things right. It was her way of building a bridge across the chasm of our shared grief. I didn't give her an answer right away. I had to go home first. That evening, I sat on the edge of Lily's bed, watching her sleep. She was 9 now, her face so much like her mother's it sometimes made my heart ache. All these years I had been driven by one thing,
providing for her, protecting her, making sure she had a good life despite the hole Sarah's absence had left. I had been living in survival mode. That night in Amelia's apartment had changed everything. It had opened a door I thought was locked forever, a door to a future that wasn't just about surviving, but about building something in Sarah's name. I thought about the foundation, the Hayes Williams Foundation. It wasn't about the money or the title, it was about turning our pain into purpose. It was about ensuring that other Lilies, other kids who had their worlds turned upside down, would have a safety net. It was about honoring Sarah in the most meaningful way possible. I reached out and gently brushed a stray curl from Lily's forehead. She stirred, her eyes fluttering open. "Daddy?" she mumbled sleepily. "I'm here, sweetie. I'm right here." In that moment, my decision was made. I would do it. For Sarah, for David, for Amelia. But most of all, for Lily. The next day, I walked into Amelia's office and told her yes. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one I could never have predicted. Life had taken the most unimaginable tragedy and twisted it into a shared, unexpected path forward. It wasn't the life I had planned, but I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that it was a life Sarah would have been proud of. And as I started this new journey, I knew I wasn't walking it alone.